After waiting over half a century, I've finally got the kit I've been waiting for. Or did I? Welcome to Scale Model Workshop and my review of Revell's new 72nd scale late production Elco PT boat. Sherman, crank up the Wayback Machine. Revell first issued a 72nd scale 80-foot Elco PT boat in 1963 to capitalize on the reported exploits of John Kennedy in PT 109. The overall look of the kit was a pretty good representation, but the glaring eyesore was a wood plank deck. I lost count how many times I started this kit, always cutting off the cast superstructure just to get rid of that planking, followed by a relatively quick loss of interest, partly because what I really wanted was a late production boat. No thanks to faulty news reporting in Hollywood, the idea of small ultra-fast boats crewed by handfuls of renegade sailors taking on capital ships and single-handedly winning the war is a myth that's endured since the inception of the PT boat. In fact, most in-theater PTs could be outrun by a destroyer, and the early torpedoes they carried were dismal failures. The Elco was the prominent boat used in the Pacific, and it came into its own as a gunboat, proving especially effective when employed in the anti-shipping role against Japanese supply barges. By the end of the war, pound for pound, the late-model PTs were the most heavily armed vessels in the U.S. Navy. I first became aware of Revell's new PT boat kits because of that crafty internet and its uncanny algorithms that push things of possible interest into your field of vision. Revell's latest PT boat seemed to be just what the doctor ordered, a complete fix for my old never-completed shipwrecks. The manufacturer's built-up images looked really nice. I read the fine-scale build review of the early production version of this kit, and it seemed to give it a good rating. What really caught my eye was the opening of the last paragraph. Overall, this kit's a nice extended weekend out-of-the-box build. Its dimensions are true to scale. It sounded like an all-round winner, but I'll get back to this review later. Since there are a number of in-box reviews out there, I'm going to skip right to the actual construction. Comparing the deck of the new kit against the vintage kit, you can see that the new kit's longer. The older hull was molded in one piece, while the new hull consists of 4 parts. One difference that really stands out is how the chine's represented. Looking from the underside, the original hull is actually more true to the prototype. The chine's where the upper and lower hull meet, and it's marked by a board that runs the length of the hull. Here you can see that the lower edge of the chine's quite prominent. In fact, in the real boat, there's actually a gap between the hull and the lower edge of the chine board. In the new kit, Revell pretty much just molded the lower hull smoothly into the lower edge of the chine, while the older kit has a definite step representing the board. Looking more closely, you can see that the two halves aren't quite symmetrical at the bow. The port side has a slight hint of a step, and the hull slightly more concave as it approaches the chine, while the starboard side actually has a slight convexity. Also note that the chine doesn't quite line up at the center, and the way Revell's tried to simulate the bow plate's a bit dodgy. All my kits had prominent sink marks in both sides. I think the detail could have been handled better had it been molded into the hull. A little TLC is required to get the best out of this kit's hull. I highly recommend test fitting and taping the major components in place first, then start at the bow and tack it together in steps, tightly drawing the two halves together as you go. Once the two halves are secure, you can do a little adjusting of the stern piece so that it can be brought flush with the bottom and sides of the hull. A flat piece clamped in place like this will help in alignment. The bow plate was cemented in place, followed by filling in the gaps and sink marks. I did a little selective shaping to fix the convexity in the starboard side and sand the bow plate flush. Extra care during this stage of the assembly will reveal the beautiful hull form of the Elco PT. I elected to fix the detail issues with the hull, so I scribed a line along the upper edge of the chine. The molded chine was sanded off, leaving a faint guideline. A strip of styrene was cemented in place along the guideline. 10,000 styrene was cut to form the bow plate. I used masking tape as a sanding stop to establish a uniform thickness of the bow plate. As you can see, the deck of the new kit's a huge improvement, but before cementing the deck to place, make sure the channel that engages the hull is clean, and again spend whatever time you need to test fit and adjust. Drill out all the marked holes. It took a little bit of deciphering to make some sense out of this little bit of cryptology. Long gone are the days when instructions actually contained meaningful text rather than primitive hieroglyphics. Before checking the legend, I thought this symbol meant you've gone far enough tonight, time to quit. At this point, you may want to take a detour from the instructions. And even if you've only built a ship or two, you've no doubt faced the unique difficulties involved in painting and finishing. The majority of the time, decks, vertical structures, and details are different colors, so if you completely assemble everything before painting, then you generally have a masking nightmare, and that gets even more complicated when dealing with camouflage patterns like this. If at all possible, your best bet's to avoid the masking issue altogether and break the assemblies at deck level. However, the way this kit's designed, right from the start they throw a monkey wrench into the whole affair, by having the forward wall of the aft cabin integral with the below deck portion of the interior. This also results in a nonsensical gap between the deck and the superstructure. Assembling the aft deck house straight from the kit will get you this. Furthermore, the odd breakdown of parts and profuse sink marks at the aft end of the cabin make for another whole set of issues. I chose to sidestep the problem with the stock construction and do a little re-engineering. The objective was to wind up with two basic parts, the walls and the roof, which is how the kit should have been designed. I started by sectioning off the front wall of the cabin interior. The cabin interior was then cemented in place, and the resulting gap in the deck was filled with strip stock. The deck was now cemented to the hull. Despite careful test fitting, I found there were still gaps that needed some tightening up, and I handled these with epoxy clay. The front wall was cemented to the sides of the cabin, and here it is finished down, and you can see the difference. The aft end of the deck house was handled by sectioning off the corner of the roof that was molded to the aft wall. This made it easier to fill the sunken portion of the wall. The section of wall was then cemented in place to complete the deck house side structure. The roof portion was joined up to make one complete piece, and again making it easier to deal with the sink marks and poor fit. Here are the two basic pieces, and now the deck house will be removable for painting. Another deviation from the instructions that I'd recommend is not cementing parts 26 and 27 until you get the chart house in position. These parts have no actual locating pins, and as you'll find out later, they need to fit as neatly as possible here. As I started on the chart house, I began to notice a pattern. A good many of the structural pieces in this kit that should be flat were molded with pretty awful undulations. I credit this to overly thick cross-sections, errors in the molding process, and poor quality control. The problem was consistent over all three kits that I'd purchased for this review, and in all honesty, if I'd been more diligent in the beginning and closely inspected the parts, I wouldn't have even started this kit or purchased the paint. Rather than the easy extended weekend build promised in the review, it was looking more like a lost weekend. However, since I'd come this far, I decided to just get it done. So I'll see you next weekend for part 2.